This story starts with two cats. Actually, a lot of cats, but it really started with two. Their owner had looked after them lovingly for, I don't know, a few weeks, but he just couldn't anymore. One day, a bit off from the city, he trapped them all underground. Naturally, the owner of the cattery was a bit annoyed with this and launched an investigation, but unfortunately, it would go nowhere. But who was this evil man? None other than him. Absorbed Cat, more commonly known these days as Lost Boxy. But apart from that, what else is going on in this chaotic world? Well, there's a butler known as Titanium getting super rich off the back of a talk show and is looking to build a fancy hotel. There's a private investigator who has set up a business floating in midair, and someone's trying to build a bunch of mansions. I'm sure they won't turn up as an ancient relic 1,000 years later. But wonderful news! The owner of King Titanium Talk Show and recent hospital owner just dug up a road to try and connect his hospital to his hotel and just found the cats. I'm sure the owner will be happy. He answered by ignoring the entire investigation and joining a terrorist group founded by a new member of the city. Even worse for the government. Oh, now they're the MI8. The rebel group learned some dark magic from the private investigator and built an aircraft carrier 100 meters in the sky. Both sides would begin preparing for a final showdown, with the rebellion relying on their leader's skill and commands and blowing stuff up, while the MI8 would appoint Titanium as their strategist. Well, actually, he appointed himself, because politics. But just in case their plan went horribly wrong, Titanium built a second fallback city just in case. Just as defences were set using designs from the election schism, the mayor of the city made a snap decision. The war was cancelled. Titanium and Mr. Monkey were very against this and proved it by getting Absorbed Cat on their side. But at this point, the government was so fractured that they decided, because politics, to blow up the entire city and move on. They wiped their memories, learned one more piece of dark magic from the private investigator, and made themselves immortal. The sheer force of this explosion would throw everything in different directions, with different resources forming new biomes like the deserts of Galactus and the forests of Hyber. Chapter 2. X-Life. Rain lashed down as the lone traveller stumbled across a frozen lake. He knew something was wrong. He had just died after falling off a cliff. That should not have happened. He was, although he didn't know how, immortal. According to his calculations, he had 10 lives left before he died. Permanently. His name was Titanium. As he reached the other side, he found a small, well-built hut. Knocking on the door, he asked for shelter. The person who answered looked familiar. When the morning came, they had made some plans. They were in the forest of Hyber and knew that there was a village a kilometre north to the forests of Amethyst. Those lands were controlled by the Amethyst Empire. After waiting a week gathering resources, they set off on horseback towards the city. They set up tents and came back time after time, terrorizing the locals. Of course, their leader, your local cat, was furious, and it was clear a battle was coming. But it didn't. Due to reason nobody really knows, the capitalist empire just dissolved. Best shown in this cringy, badly put together video advertising Titanium's new empire. I'll not play the sound because it's just bad. It's really bad. Titanium was very low and needed resources. He had tried fighting your local cat for it, but she was rich in diamonds and horribly outgeared him. Picking up his bed, fitting it in one of his pockets, he snuck into local cat's home one night and set a spawn there. Hiding under the chest room, he would come out at night and steal. Because politics. In a technique he definitely didn't invent, he would only steal roughly half of the resources to decrease chances of being caught. One day, he was brewing a night vision potion in the secret room and realised he didn't have an ingredient. Thinking he could substitute it, he snatched up some moss and put it in, because that makes sense. Boom! The entire basement was gone. Moss was spreading everywhere, rapidly reaching him. His leg touched it. He felt an acidic sensation travelling up his leg. He knew he had created something terrible, and there was only one way to prevent his instant death. Drinking the milk in one, he felt it stop and begin to seep into his leg. He felt his face cut open and began the long journey to the only one who could help him, drinking as much milk as he could along the way. As he reached the Mushroom Island, he saw Tiny Mr. Monkey waiting for him. He treated the wound as best he could, but told Titanium that he would have to drink milk and mushroom stew at every meal to keep it at bay. And because he decided that his face looked really terrible with the massive cut on it, he from that moment on wore a really badly designed mask, which he still wears to this day. They eventually came up with a cure and sent out a message to the world to meet them at the Mushroom Island so they could administer it. Unfortunately for them, the first person to arrive was a one ropey student who kicked them off the island. Tiny and Titanium fled, with Tiny going back to Hyber, and Titanium, wasn't really sure where to go. He just exited a swamp 8,000 blocks away from the forests of Hyber when he came across a mountain. At the foot, staring up at it, was someone else. Their name was, according to them, Lost Boxy, but Titanium could have sworn their name was Absorbed Cat. Chapter 3, CMP Season 2. 20 years later, at the same spot, a massive city stands tall. Pripyat is flourishing, and with it, Lost and Titanium at the head, it is unique wherever you go. It has a dam, an airport, a nuclear plant, and their pride and joy, the staircase. Running up the mountain, it was their government building's entrance, and a staircase. Other nations were also flourishing. To the north in the Galactus deserts are the countries of BTSD and Peaceland. BTSD is ruled by ex-private investigator
Galactus,
and
he has
now actor. A secret though. He knows the history of this world. He knows that he was the only one not to be memory wiped. He knows what dangers wars bring, and of course, he has magical powers. Nearby Galactus is Mr. Ocelot 375, the ruler of Peaceland, ironically one of the only free countries to go to war in the entire season. Now, it is in the Mesa biome next to the deserts of Galactus, and claims the entirety of it. But Pripyat and Hibernia also claim part of the Mesa for nuclear testing, so you can see where this is going. And now for Hibernia. Hibernia is the second strongest nation in the known world. It is ruled by Tiny Mr. Monkey and is basically a farm. Now, he's going to hate me for that, but if you look at pictures, it is basically a farm. Now, Tiny Mr. Monkey is very skilled at everything from Minecraft to Minecraft and Minecraft, but the one thing he's not skilled in was diplomacy, because his main instinct was to kill everyone at the diplomacy table. So diplomacy was mainly left to Lost Boxy, because he was less of a pyromaniac and more peaceful some of the time. Occasionally he would resort to strangling whoever was at the other end, but that's politics. Now, everyone was itching to go to war with everyone else because it had been a few months now since the last political schism, and everyone was eager to get going again. So finally, Pripyat and Hibernia would come up with an excuse to coax Peaceland into a war. They would build a military camp and officially claim their nuclear testing zone as theirs. Now, while they were in space, also known as the End, building some Star Destroyers, Mr. Ocelot came out of his holiday home to find this massive camp and was a bit annoyed, but he had super weapons of his own. But not a nuclear bomb, because they were banned-ish. He had a chunk destroyer, and erased the entire chunk. I don't know why, but that was the beginning of the Christmas dinner war anyway. Hibernia and Pripyat would fly back to their camp to find it void, and would immediately declare war on Peaceland with the justification of, "You killed all our soldiers, brah." So the Christmas dinner war was happened, but we've already made a video on that and I'm not going to cover it in too much detail. Basically, it was a humiliating defeat for Peaceland. But unfortunately, with big wars come big peace conferences, and soon Titanium and Mr. Ocelot are having an animated discussion about how the others should pay for all the damages. when a massive boom distracts them for about the next 5 months. They look out the window, what do they see? Smoke, fire, zombies. That's right, the virus is back. So while Mr. Ocelot made his convenient getaway, Titanium called Lost Boxy, who kindly responded with, "Hey, the power plant just blew up, leave me alone, go away." So Titanium tries to take on the horde single-handedly, breaks his leg, nearly gets infected again, and goes up the mountain. Then he bumps into Lost Boxy, who says, "Yeah, so oh my god, what happened to Pripyat? What happened to Pripyat was a virus's long-awaited return to revenge." And they're both forced into a bunker. Go insane. Keep going insane. 4 months later, they're still insane, except this time, they've made some breakthroughs. Number 1. Pripyat has finally remembered Mr. Monkey's phone number. Unfortunately, they're too far underground to actually make radio contact. So Titanium's crafted this radio room, which Lost Boxy has no idea what it's about because it's underground. You can't get an antenna. Radio room with an extension to make Titanium forget he's underground, which looks just like a village house. That's because it is a village house. He imported from China. It even has a name tag on it saying, "Made in China." So anyway, they finally decide to elaborate and go on some side quests, but both of them need directions, so they go to Peaceland. Begrudgingly, of course. They come to Peaceland and say, "Oh, hi, oh my god, what happened to Peaceland?" What happened to Peaceland was a massive virus's long return. Oh my goodness, what happened to Peaceland? Well, what actually happened to Peaceland was the virus getting a different variant called... It wasn't named. But what's worse is, the original virus made by Titanium is now in a face-off with the virus accidentally made by Mr. Ocelot. So you can see where this is going. In about 2 weeks, the viruses will merge, massive tsunami, everyone is unhappy, mountains survive, nothing else survives. Yay! And then Mr. Monkey shows up and says, "Hey, oh my goodness, what happened to Peaceland? What happened to Peaceland? Well, you don't need to hear it." 2 weeks later, Titanium wakes up to find Mr. Monkey and Lost Boxy shoving those handy little elytras into himself. After putting on the little elytras, they fly off. Why do they fly off? Tsunami! Ow. Yep, that's right, they crashed. They crashed. Do you know why they crashed? Because Emerald Mountain is suddenly 200 blocks tall because that's an earthquake. Yep, there's not just been earthquakes, there's been volcanic eruptions, there's been tsunamis, there's been earthquakes, 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 there's been earthquakes. There's been a lot of earthquakes. But now Emerald Mountain is wide, thick, 200 meters tall, but most of all, habitable. There's even a nice little sand formation called New Zealand. Bit smaller, though. So they decide that they should become hermits and build some stuff there. And they invite all their other friends over as the virus is eating up the rest of the world and tsunami cleaning up the virus. Who will win? I wonder. Water versus acid. It's a standoff. So everyone else shows up and it's kind of like, "Hey, so you ruined our world, get off our island." But then Pripyat points out that it's their island in the first place and everyone should live on. And then your local CAC shows up, wins the elections, and now everybody's under her thumb. Except now there's a religion called Ocelotism run by Mr. Ocelot, and everyone hates Pripyat for reasons. And that brings us to CMP Season 3, which started last week and is pretty cool, and me and Lost will eventually make a video on it. Nobody correct my grammar. I know it's supposed to be Lost and I don't care. Goodbye. For now. Oh. You're still here? You watched till the end. That means you're one of two things. A, you're one of the people concerned in this video, in which case you can go away now. B, you're someone who actually enjoyed this video for whatever reason and has stuck around to the end. If that is you, you have no choice now. Press that red button. or I will do nothing. But seriously, it's really nice, and I would kind of enjoy it. Bye!